Hi, I'm Nancy Steenson College Admissions Coach, and I'm here with my friend Jack Wang from Longhorn Financial to present our college planning tip of the week. So Jack, last time we spoke, you were giving us some thoughts on merit aid. Can you share with us, are there nuances involved with that? Is there fine print that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, thanks for this question, Nancy. This is an area of confusion for a lot of families, right? So merit aid, just again to define it, is generally scholarships that are based on non-need factors. So nothing tied to your financials. So scholarships tend to be based on things like grades and test scores and things like that. But that's not always the case. So there are types of aid that are based on other factors not related to either your financial information or your grades. So, for example, I'm aware of a college that if you did a particular club in high school, extra $3,000, I believe. There's one college that's kind of rural, so if you go out and visit, extra $1,000, right? There's one that I'm aware of where if you fill out the financial aid form, just by filling it out, extra $1,000, right? So there are a lot of these variations. And so some of the things that parents want to watch out for, number one, of course, is are these things renewable? So sometimes they're only good for 1 year. Sometimes they're good for all 4 years. There are times where schools will what's called front load aid. So they'll give you more aid in the first year to try, get you in the door essentially, and then some of it trails off. Um, but also the ones that are based on grades, sometimes they are based on different factors. So some schools will say, hey, you know what, to keep this scholarship while you're in college, you just need to be in good standing, which might be 2.0 or 2.5. Okay? Should be relatively easy to hit. But recently I became aware of a college that gave a scholarship that required a minimum GPA of 3.8 to be to be maintained ongoing, right? And that's really hard, right? Like you got to do really well to maintain a 3.8. And others will be like related to major. And so the tip for parents is you really want to understand what goes into these offers. And then really for younger parents is really understanding these kind of requirements as well, because you don't want to look at these things like, oh, my son or daughter can qualify for a lot of aid and then potentially lose it. And that really then goes back to affordability.
So that's interesting. So it sounds to me like students and their parents should plan for worst case scenario, not best case scenario. If the student gets a wonderful scholarship, for instance, and it requires a very high GPA to maintain, God forbid the student gets mono, right? Or what if there's a pandemic and we suddenly move to online learning and the student doesn't transition well to online learning? So there are things out of a student's control despite all his or her best efforts. So those are the kinds of things I guess people really need to be aware of so that they're not partway into their college journey and suddenly realizing they can't afford the next 2 or 3 years.
Right, using a student getting mono as an example, right? Obviously, we don't want that, right? We don't want anybody to get sick. But even there are details around that. So, for example, some merit aid scholarships will say, look, if you don't maintain this, or if you had to drop out of school, or if you had to go down to part time because of some circumstance, once you're out of the running, you're out, done, right? So even if that happened, let's say second semester of freshman year, and then you recover or things get back to normal, those that scholarship will say for sophomore year and on, you're done, you're out. Okay, too bad. But other scholarships at other schools say no, okay, we'll let you sort of drop out, not drop out, I shouldn't say that, but sort of fall out of the scholarship program, but you can still get back in, under certain qualifying factors. So even that's a difference. And again, so for parents of high school seniors, you obviously want to know this now. But for parents of high school juniors and younger, like you said, like you want to have this understanding, and I like how you put it, like you want to plan for sort of best case, worst case, and sort of probable case, right? And obviously, again, we don't want anybody to get sick, but you want to look at whether or not some of these scholarships are easy or difficult to maintain. And if they're difficult to maintain and you think that your son or daughter might lose that money, can you still afford to send your kid to the same school without that scholarship, right? That's a much bigger question around affordability that parents really need to consider.
So Jack, what's the best way for a student or a parent to figure these nuances out? Are the details available on the website? Are they made clear in an award letter?
So for high school seniors, I mean, well, really for any families, sometimes these details are spelled out in the award letter. Not always. I will emphasize not always. Do not rely just on the award letter to tell you all these nuances because they rarely give you all of these. They might give you some, but not all. Sometimes this information's on the website, okay? And often it is. But the best way to do it is as you're doing tours, if you're like a high school junior or younger, or doing some of these virtual information sessions, or if you're a high school senior and then you're going to go to a virtual like accepted students day or something, you can just simply ask the question and they'll tell you, right? But the challenge is you have to know to ask, right? Because often I've been to enough of these sessions, both as a parent and sort of as a professional, that very rarely are these questions asked. But they really should be, right? If money matters to you, they really should be asked. And so it's okay to ask. But you need to know to ask.
Jack, that is great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope everyone can join us next week for our college planning tip of the week.
Thanks, Nancy.